Welcome to the Shorten anime channel. Today we'll dive into the latest episode of Renegade Immortal. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. Wang Lin is a very smart boy with loving parents. Although he and his parents are shunned by the rest of their relatives, his parents always held high hopes that he will one day become someone great. One day, Wang Lin suddenly gained the chance to walk the path of an immortal, but found that he only had mediocre talent at best. Watch Wang Lin as he breaks through his lack of talent and walks the path towards becoming a real immortal. Renegade Immortal, Episode 1. Taiju sat on the side of a little road in the village, looking at the blue sky in a daze. Taiju was not his real name, but a nickname. Due to his poor health as a child, his father was afraid he might not live, so he was given this nickname as a tradition. His real name was Wang Lin. The Wang family was considered a big family name in the area, a family of carpenters. The Wang family was well known in the area, and they owned a number of shops that sold wood products. Taiju's father was the second son of the family. He was born from a concubine, therefore he couldn't take over the family business, so he left the house after he got married and settled in this village. However, due to his father being a skilled carpenter, Taiju's family was pretty well off, not having to worry about food or clothes. They were well respected within the village. Taiju had been very intelligent ever since he was little. He loved to read books and thought deeply about matters. Almost everyone in the village agreed that he was a prodigy. Every time his father heard someone praise Taiju, the wrinkles on his face would fade and he would reveal a happy smile. His mother cared for him a lot. One could say that he had grown up in his parents' love. He knew that his parents had high expectations of him. Other children his age were all working in the fields, while he sat at home reading. The more he read, the more he thought about. He yearned for the world outside of the village. Taiju raised his head and looked at the end of the road. After letting out a sigh, he closed his book, got up, and walked home. His father was sitting in the courtyard. Holding a pipe, he took a deep breath and asked, "Taiju, how goes your studies?" As Taiju walked through the door. Taiju muttered a few words as he passed by. His father shook the ashes out of his pipe, rose up and said, "Taiju, you have to study properly. Next year is the district exam. Whether you have a future or not will all depend on this exam. Don't end up like me, who will spend my entire life in a village. Enough, you complain about this every day. If you ask me, our Taiju will definitely pass the exam." Taiju's mother carried over some food and set it on the table. She gestured at the two to come and eat. Taiju responded with a sound, then he sat down and casually ate a few mouthfuls. His mother affectionately looked at him and passed him the few pieces of meat there were. "Dad, is fourth uncle almost here?" Taiju asked as he raised his head. "Calculating the time, it should be within these next few days. Your fourth uncle is more successful than your father." "Hey, Taiju's mom, have the special dishes prepared for fourth uncle all been packed?" The moment Taiju's father mentioned fourth uncle, there was a hint of sadness on his face. His mom nodded and emotionally said, "Taiju, your fourth uncle is a very good person. In these past few years, it was all thanks to him that your father's wood carvings have stayed at a good price. If you are able to achieve success, don't forget to repay your fourth uncle." As Taiju's mom was talking, the sound of a horse was heard outside the door. Following the sound of the horse-drawn carriage, a hearty laugh could be heard. "Second brother, open the door!" Taiju was surprised. He immediately rushed to open the main gate. He saw a strong, middle-aged man with bright eyes standing outside. When he saw Taiju, he laughed and rubbed Taiju's head. Smiling, he said, "Taiju, I only haven't seen you in half a year, and you have grown taller again." Taiju's parents immediately stood up. His father, smiling, said, "Fourth brother, I figured it was about time you arrived. Hurry inside." "Taiju, why haven't you gotten a chair for your fourth uncle yet?" Taiju happily agreed. He hurried back into the house, took out a chair, and placed it next to the dining table. He carefully wiped it with his sleeves while looking hopefully at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man winked in his direction and jokingly said, "Taiju, since when were you so diligent? I remember the last time I was here. You were not like this." Taiju's father glanced at Taiju and said, "This little rascal was just inquiring about when you would arrive." The middle-aged man saw Taiju blushing and laughingly said, "Taiju, your fourth uncle hasn't forgotten his promise to you." After he finished speaking, he took out 2 books and placed them on the table. Taiju excitedly cheered, then flipped through the books. He could barely contain his excitement. Taiju's mom kindly glanced at her son and said to the middle-aged man, "Fourth brother, your older brother is always thinking of you. You should stay for a few more days this time." The middle-aged man shook his head and said, "Second sister-in-law, there are many matters to attend to in the family these days. I must head home early tomorrow morning. After this busy time, I'll come back and see you guys." He gave his second brother a regretful look. Taiju's father sighed, saying, "Don't listen to my wife. Properly pack the goods tomorrow. The family's matters are more important. We can meet next time." The middle-aged man looked at Taiju's father and asked, "Second brother, Taiju is 15 years old, yes?" Taiju's father nodded and said, "After this year, this little rascal is going to be 16. In a flash, more than 10 years have quickly passed by." He looked at his son dotingly. The middle-aged man pondered for a while and said in a serious tone, "Second brother, second sister-in-law, I have something to tell you. The Heng Yue sect is taking in disciples. This year, the family has 3 recommendation slots, and I received one of them." Taiju's father was stunned and said with a pale face, "Heng Yue sect? The Heng Yue sect that is full of immortals?" The middle-aged man smiled, nodded, and said, "Second brother, it is that very immortal sect. Our family is still a prominent one in the area and has the qualifications to recommend potential disciples. You know my boy, he can't really study, but he is good with swords and knives. I doubt the immortal sect will take my son. This spot is really precious. I know Taiju has been very smart since he was little and has always loved to study. He might have a chance." Taiju's mother felt delighted and said, "Fourth brother, this. The middle-aged man rubbed Taiju's head and said, "Second brother, second sister-in-law, let this matter be settled. Let Taiju try. If he really gets accepted, it is his fortune." Taiju confusedly looked at his parents and his fourth uncle. He wasn't able to understand what was going on. "Immortals? What are immortals?" Taiju softly and hesitantly asked. The middle-aged man's face turned serious. Looking at Taiju, he said, "Taiju, immortals are those who can fly in the sky. They are simply not something we mortals can understand." Taiju was confused but grew curious of immortals. Taiju's father excitedly got up, pulled Taiju's mom, and was about to bow to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man quickly pulled them up and sincerely said, "Second brother, what are you doing? My mother died early. If it wasn't for second brother's mother taking care of me, I wouldn't be here today. Taiju is my nephew, and this is the least I can do." Taiju's father started crying. He heavily patted the middle-aged man's back, nodded his head, and sternly said to Taiju, "Remember, Wang Lin, never forget what your fourth uncle has done for us, or else I will not consider you my son." Taiju's heart trembled. Although he was ignorant towards immortals, he could tell from his parents' expressions that they viewed this matter with great importance. He knelt in front of his fourth uncle and kowtowed a few times. The middle-aged man pulled up Taiju and praised him. "Good child, you get ready and I'll pick you up at the end of the month." That night, Taiju went to bed early. He could still hear sounds from his father and fourth uncle. Father was very happy. Even though he rarely drank, he had to drink a few cups with fourth uncle today. Immortals, what were they? Taiju's heart was very excited. He knew in his heart that this was an opportunity to see the outside world. Fourth uncle left early the next morning. Taiju and his parents saw him off at the village entrance. On the way back, he clearly noticed that his father looked a lot younger. His eyes were filled with hope. The expectations in his eyes were much greater than the time he wanted Taiju to pass the district exam. There were no secrets in the village, even if it was how many pups a dog gave birth to. Everyone in the village would hear the news. Soon, everyone in the village heard the news from Taiju's mother, and all the neighbors came in to visit. Everyone's gazes toward Taiju was different from before. Some were filled envy and others with jealousy. The Wang family gave birth a good son. He has been accepted as a disciple of the Heng Yue sect. I have watched this child, Taiju, as he grew up. He was very smart ever since he was little. Now he is a Heng Yue sect disciple. He has a very promising future. Taiju, you have great talent. When you are successful in the future, don't forget to come back and visit. These talks filled Taiju's ears, acting like Taiju was already a Heng Yue sect disciple. Every time his parents heard it, they couldn't stop smiling. The wrinkles on their faces had lessened greatly. Whenever Taiju walked alone in the village, All of the villagers would passionately ask him about this and that. There were even people who told their kids to follow Tiju as an example. Half a month passed by quickly. The news of Tiju becoming a Heng Yue sect disciple had spread quickly. All of the nearby villagers had come to see Tiju. Everyone who came by brought gifts. Taiju's parents couldn't reject them, but as they left, Taiju's parents planned return gifts. According to Taiju's father, our son will be an immortal in the future, so he can't owe any favors. We will prepare return gifts for all the visitors. Soon, the Wang family learned that Tiju's fourth uncle gave his son Spot to Tiju. One after another, they came to congratulate him. Tiju's father attached great importance to the visiting relatives because many of them used to look down on him in the past and drove him out of the family all those years ago. Now that they were all coming to visit him, he felt like his years of sorrow were instantly swept away. He and Tieju's mother discussed a bit and decided to properly entertain everyone. They spent a fortune to hire the village teacher to write invitations to send to their relatives. The village teacher didn't want money, he wanted Taiju to acknowledge that he grew up studying in his care. Taiju had no objections as this was the truth. After the invitations were sent to most of the Wang family members, there were so many people that Taiju's dad had to move the party's location to the village square and set up a feast. The villagers helped entertain the guests. As they spoke to each other, they would praise Taiju endlessly. Taiju's dad had brought his wife and son to the village entrance to personally greet the guests and introduce each relative to Tiju. This is your third grandfather. When father left the family, your third grandfather secretly helped a lot. Taiju, you have to remember to repay his kindness, Taiju's father said as he helped a white-haired old man. Taiju quickly nodded. The old man looked at Taiju and said, "Second brother, time passes by so fast. Your son is already this big. His future is already brighter than yours." Taiju's father's face was full of radiance. He smiled and said, "Third grandfather, Taiju has been smart ever since he was a kid. He was bound to be better than me. Take your time. Wife, help support third grandfather." Taiju's mother quickly helped the old man walk toward the feast. Seeing the old man leaving, Taiju's father let out a snort and said to Taiju, "That old guy looked down on your dad and forced me away. Now that you have a good future, he comes to congratulate me. He is just that kind of relative." Taiju cluelessly nodded and asked, "Is fourth uncle coming?" Taiju's father shook his head. "Your fourth uncle sent a letter. He won't be able to come back until the end of the month." At that moment, another carriage arrived at the village entrance. A 50-plus-year-old man came out. He looked at Tieju's father and said, "Second brother, congratulations." Taiju's father's face turned complicated, and he said, "Big brother." The old man's eyes swept across and looked at Tiju. He smiled. "Second brother, so this is your son? Not bad. Maybe he will really be selected." Tiju's father frowned, stretched, and said, "Taiju might not have much merit, but he is smart and loves to read books. He is bound to be selected." That is not necessarily true. When immortal sects look for disciples, there are very strict requirements. "I see that this kid is very dumb. Going will be a waste of time for him," said a haughty voice from the carriage. Then a 16 or 17-year-old boy stepped out. The young boy looked very pretty. He had eyebrows like scimitars, a face like Guan Yu, and eyes full of disdain. Taiju's father glared at him, and Wang Lin gave him a deep look but didn't say anything. The old man's face changed colors and he shouted, "Wang Zhuo, how can you be so rude? This is your second uncle and your little brother Wang Lin. Why haven't you greeted them?" He turned to Tiju's father and said, "My son's words are ugly. Second brother, don't mind him, but..." As he was talking, he suddenly turned and said, "But second brother, it is not a simple matter for these immortals to accept a disciple. It is a matter of fate. This time, it's because the Heng Yue sect was very interested in my son that our Wang family was given 3 spots, including his." Tiju's father snorted and said, "If your son can do it, then my son will definitely be selected." The youth laughed, not caring about the old man's words. With disdain, he said, "So, you are second uncle. I suggest you don't be so optimistic. The way of cultivation is very complex, and only 1 in 10,000 people can even learn it. How can he compete with me, who, while not being an official disciple yet, was personally selected by an immortal teacher?" The old man's face flashed with a color of pride. Then he scolded the youth and brought him toward the feast. "Taiju, don't worry. Even if you are not selected, it doesn't matter. There is always the district exam next year, Tieju's father earnestly said after suppressing his anger. Wang Lin confidently whispered, "Dad, don't worry, I'll be selected." Taiju's dad gently patted his son's shoulder. His eyes were filled with rays of hope. One after another, they greeted a lot of relatives. Taiju's father took him back to the feast. In front of them was a bustling scene of people celebrating. Taiju's father cried out, "My dear relatives, my fellow villagers, I, Wang Tianshui, am not a very cultured man and don't have much to say. But today, I'm very happy because my son has a chance to become a Hengyue sect disciple. This is the happiest moment of my life. I won't say more, but thank you all for coming." He raised his cup and drained it of the wine within. "Second brother, your son has been very smart ever since he was little. He will definitely be selected, like Wangju's son, and become an immortal. Second brother, having a son like Tieju means you have not lived your life in vain. In the future, all you have to do is wait to enjoy the good fortune. Taiju, you must make your father proud. You must enter the Hengyue sect no matter what." There were numerous bright scenes everywhere. The sounds of celebration came from all sides. However, there were many people like Wangzhou's father who on the surface were giving their congratulations, but in their hearts had always looked down upon Tiju's father and Tiju himself. Wangzhou's father looked at his son and then at Tiju. He felt very dissatisfied. Fourth brother's actions were outside of his expectations, but as the immortals weren't blind, there was no way Taiju would be selected. People passed by one by one. Taiju's father pulled Taiju around from table to table to give a toast and introduce various unknown relatives to him. Today, Taiju's father had consumed a lot of wine. He had never been this well regarded before. The feast lasted until it was very late, and everyone started to head home. Before leaving, and still with a look of contempt, Wang Zhuo, while no one noticed, whispered to Tieju, "Little fool, you won't be selected. You're not good enough." He left with his father as he displayed a smile full of contempt. After returning home, Tieju lied on his bed. He secretly decided in his heart that he had to be selected no matter what. Half a month passed by quickly. Today, Taiju's fourth uncle arrived in a carriage. Taiju's parents quickly welcomed him inside. The middle-aged man washed his face and hurriedly said, "Second brother, second sister-in-law, I can't stay long this time. I'm taking Taiju and leaving. The Hengyue sect will arrive to pick up the potential disciples tomorrow morning." Taiju's father was stunned. A trace of sadness appeared on his face. He firmly said, "Fine. Taiju, follow your fourth uncle. If you are selected, study dutifully at the Hengyue sect. However, if you aren't selected, don't worry and come back home." Taiju, not wanting to leave his parents, nodded heavily. His mother took out a parcel from the room and lovingly said, "Tiju, listen to your fourth uncle and don't cause any trouble. The outside is not the same as home. You must have patience. Mother has prepared you some new clothes. Also, there are some of your favorite baked sweet potatoes. Mother will miss you. If you are not selected, just come back." As Taiju's mom was talking, tears began appearing in her eyes. Taiju had never left the village in his entire life. This was his first time leaving. Fourth uncle emotionally said, "Taiju, you must be selected so you make your parents proud. Second brother, second sister-in-law. The family will have a big celebration in a few days, so I am too busy today. Tomorrow I'll pick you guys up. The results for the 3 candidates should be out by then." He quickly pulled Tiju onto the carriage, whipped the horse, and set off. With tears in their eyes, Tiju's parents stared at the carriage as it quickly disappeared into the distance. Taiju has never left home before. Will he be bullied? Taiju's mom said while biting her lip. Her eyes were filled with sadness. He has grown up and has to deal with his own fortune. Tiju's father picked up his pipe and inhaled deeply. More wrinkles appeared on his face. That wraps up the content for today's episode. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to get notifications for the next episode. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.